Before social media, before travel blogs, before anyone could post a selfie in front of a famous landmark, the ancient Greeks made the first ever bucket list. They called it the 7 wonders of the world, the most spectacular human achievements they could imagine. But here's the thing, most of them don't even exist anymore. So how do we know about them? Because ancient travelers like Herodotus, Philo of Byzantium, and Antipater of Sidon described them in letters, poems, and travel guides written over 2,000 years ago. So why were the 7 wonders so wonderful? Let's dig in. Let's start with the only one that's still standing, the Great Pyramid of Giza. Located just outside modern-day Cairo, Egypt. Built around 2560 BC, this monument was already ancient by the time of King Tut and nearly 2,500 years old when Cleopatra ruled Egypt. In fact, Cleopatra is closer in time to us than she was to the pyramid's construction. I know, it's mind-blowing. It was built for Pharaoh Khufu using more than 2 million limestone blocks, each weighing several tons. How did the ancient Egyptians place all those blocks during the lifetime of Khufu? Good question, and I have no good answer for you on that one. For 3,800 years, it was the tallest man-made structure on Earth, until medieval cathedrals finally surpassed it. Even today, nobody's completely sure how they built it with such precision. Lasers show how it's almost perfectly aligned with true north. Not bad for a civilization without GPS. Next up, we head east to Babylon, in what is now modern-day Iraq, near Baghdad, and the legendary Hanging Gardens. They were said to have been built by King Nebuchadnezzar II, the same Babylonian ruler mentioned in the Bible's book of Daniel, for his homesick wife who missed the green hills of her homeland. Terraced gardens, lush trees, waterfalls, a paradise rising from the desert. The only problem, we don't actually know where they were. Archaeologists have never really found them, and some historians think they might have been confused with the gardens in Nineveh, an Assyrian city famous for the Bible's story of Jonah and the whale, located hundreds of miles away. So maybe they were real, or maybe they were ancient fake news. Next, we sail across the Aegean to the Temple of Artemis at Ephesus, near modern-day Kuşadası, Turkey, one of my favorite stops from my own travels. When I visited with my friend Jeff, we walked among the ruins that once stood taller and grander than any Greek temple. A structure so impressive, ancient writers said it put all others to shame. The Temple of Artemis was destroyed and rebuilt multiple times, but by fire, by floods, finally by invaders. The version most people remember was completed around 550 BC, built entirely of marble, with 127 columns, each nearly 60 feet tall, about the height of a 6-story building. To put that in perspective, it was larger than the Parthenon in Athens and covered an area roughly the size of a modern football field. Visitors said it looked less like a temple and more like something the gods themselves might live in. It was eventually destroyed by the Goths in 268 AD. Some of its stones may have been repurposed by the Romans, possibly even used in later construction projects like the Library of Celsus just down the road in Ephesus. A few fragments of its columns were eventually taken and built into the Hagia Sophia in Istanbul, was Constantinople, which I also had the chance to visit. So in a way, the Temple of Artemis still lives on, just scattered through history. The statue of Zeus at Olympia came next, located in southern Greece on the Peloponnese Peninsula. Created by the sculptor Phidias, who also, by the way, designed the colossal statue of Athena Parthenos that once stood inside the Parthenon in Athens, it was the work of a true master. The Zeus statue stood over 40 feet tall, made of gold and ivory, seated on a grand throne. It was said that if the statue of Zeus were to come alive and rise from his seat, he'd break through the roof of his temple. It symbolized divine power and artistic perfection. Phidias' work helped define the very look of the Greek gods for centuries, strong, unwavering, and perfectly proportioned. Sadly, the statue was destroyed sometime in late antiquity, possibly by fire. But its legacy shaped every image of Zeus that followed. Then came the Mausoleum at Halicarnassus in what is now Bodrum, Turkey. It was a massive tomb built for Mausolus, a ruler of Caria, and his wife and sister, Artemisia II. Yeah, you heard that right. Many ancient royals think Egyptian King Tut and his wife Ankhesenamun were actually siblings. It was a way of keeping power in the family. By the way, I have a video here on this channel about Ankhesenamun that you can check out if you want to learn more about her. Anyway, the tomb Mausolus built was so beautiful that his name became the origin of the word mausoleum. Every year when I take my cross-country team to the local cemetery for a hill workout, I tell them about this very building and point out mausoleums in the cemetery. They still bear the name of Mausolus to this day. The mausoleum at Halicarnassus survived nearly 1,700 years before earthquakes brought it down, but its sculpted friezes were so admired that fragments still sit in the British Museum today. The Colossus of Rhodes stood on the island of Rhodes just off the southwestern coast of modern-day Turkey, where the Aegean and the Mediterranean seas meet. Rhodes was an important island for trade and naval power, a crossroads between Greece, Asia Minor, and Egypt. Rhodes successfully defended their island against sieges, and they built a tremendous bronze statue to celebrate. Imagine a Statue of Liberty, but in bronze, standing over 100 feet tall at the harbor's entrance, towering over ships that sailed beneath its gaze. It represented the sun god Helios, the island's protector, and sailors said its torch guided them safely home. Sadly, it stood for only 54 years before an earthquake shattered it. The remains lay in pieces for centuries until scrap metal traders finally sold them off, making it both one of history's greatest wonders and shortest-lived monuments. Kind of a bummer. Finally, we come to the Lighthouse of Alexandria, or the Pharos, in Alexandria, Egypt, on the coast of the Mediterranean. It all began with Alexander the Great, my favorite conqueror. After marching through Egypt on his world-conquering mission, Alexander was hailed as Pharaoh. He chose a site on Egypt's northern coast to build a new city, Alexandria, meant to be a crossroads of trade, science, and culture. He left before it was finished. After all, this was basically a side quest for him, but the city grew into one of the most important in the ancient world. After Alexander's death, his successors in Egypt, the Ptolemies, turned Alexandria into the shining jewel of the Mediterranean. It became home to the Great Library of Alexandria, where scholars studied everything from astronomy to anatomy. For a city that attracted the world's greatest minds and the heaviest ship traffic in the ancient world, they needed a beacon that matched its brilliance. The Pharos Lighthouse, built around 280 BC, stood on a small island near the harbor entrance. It rose nearly 400 feet tall, 3 stacked tiers of stone and marble, topped with a mirror system that reflected the sun by day and a fire by night, guiding ships safely home. Its light could reportedly be seen over 30 miles away. Not bad. For centuries, the Pharos symbolized not just power, but knowledge, a shining metaphor for the wisdom that Alexandria represented. And like so many wonders before it, earthquakes eventually brought it down. But its legacy lives on. The word lighthouse in many languages around the world is derived from its name, Pharos. Spanish, for example, French, for example. So there you have it. Several wonders built by dreamers, architects, kings, and conquerors, but remembered by storytellers. Of the 7, only one remains, the Great Pyramid of Giza. Yet, all of them remind us that humans have always tried to build things that last. Of course, the ancient Greeks only knew the world as they saw it. If they'd traveled further, maybe they might have included the Great Wall of China, stretching for thousands of miles across Asia, or Angkor Wat in Cambodia, the world's largest temple complex. Maybe Machu Picchu, high in the Andes of Peru, or the colossal statues of Easter Island in the Pacific. Humanity has always built wonders, every culture, every age. But even with all those, the Great Pyramid would still earn its place. It's not just the oldest wonder, it's the one that still stands. And maybe that's the real wonder. Not the buildings themselves, but the imagination that inspired them. This is Have to Know History. History you just have to know. Thanks for being here. Like, subscribe, and comment. I'll have more soon.